Hi, welcome to Big Smith News Watch. Welcome to Focus. My name is Leroy Smith. We have not had this program in a while, but I'm pleased to report to you that going forward, Focus will now be back. So, welcome again. My guest is James Bond. James Bond, the attorney at law, businessman, politician. I don't know what else we're calling you, James, but welcome to Focus. Welcome to Big Smith News Watch.
Thanks for having me, Leroy.
All right, good. So before we get into the questioning and so on, what has been happening with James Bond over the last few years? 2 years?
Yeah. Well, again, I must say to the viewers, I like Leroy's setup. Very impressed, I can remember him being a young reporter, basically carrying court stories, matters of the police, and now he has an impressive studio,
Thanks.
employing staff, and you've grown a lot since I first met you a couple of years ago, about a decade ago. So congratulations, very proud. Well, the past few years I've been trying new things. I always want to retire at age 50, retire from law, because I don't want to say I don't believe. I believe a life should be lived. A life should be lived. And you always find yourself at the end of your years having regrets. Why didn't I do this and why didn't I do that? So for the past few years, I've tried to put my own life into perspective and see what is it that I want to accomplish. What is it that I want for myself? What is it I want for my family? Because that is the most important things right now. So in the last few years, I focused. I've had a chance to reflect on how far I would have come. And I must say, during the pandemic gave me a lot of time to think, a lot of people too, a time to think on what they want to do. And I realized that business, getting involved in some form of business was an avenue that should be explored. I've never done business before. I was never business before.
Law is business.
No, law is not a business. I wouldn't consider law as a business. The reason there are limitations on the law. A lawyer could be a number of things. A lawyer could be an advisor. He could be a businessman. But the law, we do not treat it as a business, so to speak. It has more an air of nobility to it. But business, in my view, allows you to impact on the lives of more people than a lawyer could. And I'm sure you're in the business of communication now, and you better understand that. As a businessman, you have more employees. It's not just about money. You have more employees. You have to deal with people on a more regular basis. You have to solve more issues on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And so it is extremely challenging in business. I think that was a challenge that I needed. So I decided to place a lot more emphasis on business as opposed to law and politics. I still do consultancy. I still have my political views, but I've put those two on the back burner, so to speak, because, like I said, I want to retire at age 50. I don't want to be hustling up a court step, or actively campaigning, so to speak, in the latter years of my life. We only guarantee 3 score and 10, and 4 score by reason of strength. So you think if I'm 43 now, and 50 comes and get me, and then there's just a few more years to actually live or enjoy your life. So I decided, let me put some things in place, because I believe in the stabilities of your finances, stabilities of health, mental stability, physical stability, spiritual stability. Those are the 5-fold stabilities I actually believe in. And right up there, probably number 2 or number 3 is financial stability. Yes, you must have spiritual stability and physical stability, means your health. But after that comes financial stability. Because there's so many people that are depending on you, your kids, your families, strangers depend on you. So I've decided to focus on those things. So that is what has been my focus over the past few years.
So and viewers, if you're looking at the bottom of your screen, we're discussing politics, youth, business, and of course, the judiciary.
Yeah.
To some extent. So let's start with we're going to get to politics last. So that'll keep you here a bit longer. The youth, you've been dealing with youths before you got into business and so on, but now you're into business, you have a bar, and some people may call it a nightclub or what's not, but you're attracting persons from across the political and racial divide and so on, but most of who you employ or most of who you interact with or who visit your establishment is youth.
Yeah.
So what new perspectives have you gained by getting into this business which attracts this large amount of young people?
That's an excellent question. I think one of the challenges, you use the word perspective, but I want to use the word challenges. There are a number of challenges young people encounter. My business, I think, is not just for them to come, drink, and enjoy. I think I would have served as a model for young people because young people identify with me, being a product of growing up poor, relatively poor, seeking education and using that education to create a pathway towards these new things that I'm getting into. Young people see that as an inspiration, as we could do it. Because James Bond, he's from Mabaroom, he's from Lilliandale, he's from Bagotville. You'd call poor communities, and he has thrived and persevered, given obstacles, and now has a business which he runs. So they encounter challenges in trying to match up to that inspiration. Because you see somebody do something, you want to know how they did it. And the most challenging thing for young people, I believe, is access to finances. Young people in Guyana, they have tremendous talents, no doubt. Tremendous talents, tremendous dreams. But they have a problem in accessing finances to put those dreams into reality. You starting up this wonderful studio, I'm sure there were challenges along the way in terms of accessing financing. Nobody comes and says, well, here, look, go, take a 10 million, start up something. No, it doesn't happen that way. So I think that is one of the things we need to look at. Yes, there's the Small Business Bureau. Yes, there are other small lending institutions. But I think there needs to be a wider pool of agencies and networks that allow young people to access finances based on their dreams. And then the practicality of their dreams to open their own businesses and become self-employed. I don't believe the key to wealth is being an employee. That's a good start, yes. But I always believe that you have to be your own boss. You have to be a big smith to actually create the kind of the wealth that you're looking for. So that's the first, access to finances. The other thing young people have tremendous challenges with is education. Whether we want to believe it or not, there are a lot of uneducated young people in Guyana. And I think you find those from the impoverished communities, whether the urban youth, the inner city youth, the rural youth, the hinterland youth. They have tremendous challenges in access to education, quality education. Yes, I do not believe in what you may call the standard school system. I don't believe in it. I went through it, but I believe there needs to be a different form of educating of young people now. It's not just one-on-one makes two. I think young people need to learn financial literacy. They need to learn communication skills, social skills. These are things we need to train young people in. Because one of the things that you said, we don't watch news. We're probably on social media. But there is a tremendous cash flow in social media that our young people are not accessing. There are NFTs, non-fungible tokens, that young people could create and benefit from. This is not something you could get. You need to write CXC to get. but you actually create a pool of millionaires by people who are aware, educated of the opportunities that exist in the new sphere of garnering wealth. So we need education in that respect. Another thing that we need, the challenge of young people, and we see this, I don't like to bring up the bad situations, but we saw this in terms of crime. And we see a lot of young people drifting towards crime or easily influenced into crime or a life of crime. And again, this is urban youth, rural youth, youth on the countryside. There's a gravitation towards criminal activity, whether it's petty crimes, whether it's illicit substances, whether it's, and they're also vulnerable to other things too, sexual abuse, etc. There is a lot of targeting that needs to be done by, I want to say, the leaders of society. And I must commend those persons who actually play a part. I think the Guyana Police Force is doing a tremendous job in actually shifting its resources towards young people. And I must commend the Commissioner of Police, Mr. Clifton Hicken, in this regard.
But on that subject, my view, having worked or having been around the police for so long, and understanding how that program works, it's called the Social Crime Prevention Program. What needs to be done and what is not being done, I don't know if it will be done for this next budget, is that these social crime prevention programs, they need budgetary allocations, because how often are we going to go to James Bond for some sponsorship for a youth group? How often will James Bond be able to give us that money? Because he has his own thing he has going on. He has other commitments and so on. And then I believe it to some extent fosters some amount of chumminess between people who give donations to the force of a certain kind and so on, and then they expect certain favors. And I believe, and it adds to the corruption in the society. And so I believe that the force or the government should make a budgetary allocation towards the social crime prevention, so the police are less reliant on members of the business community and so on for those sort of handouts. They can assist in other ways, but food stuff and a hamper and so on to share to somebody, I think there should be a fund and finances available to the police force for that. So I wanted to make that point on that subject.
Oh, well, I see your view. But you have to remember that companies have what is called a CSR, corporate social responsibility. I would have made, not only from years, always when the police reach out, I would have supported them, because every citizen, I believe, has an interest in security, an interest in not only their own interpersonal security, but in terms of the communities, and that is important. Businesses working together with the police, I think bodes well. I know I see the aspect where you were speaking of, in terms of the chumminess and.
But do you agree with it?
It's not. We don't have to agree. It is a reality. It is a reality. I don't mind having a close friend in the Guyana Police Force. I don't mind it. Who would mind that? Having a friend in the Guyana Police Force, having a friend in government.
No, nothing is wrong with that.
Absolutely nothing. That's my point. So we all have a corporate social responsibility, whether it's as a company or as an individual. We all have that individual responsibility towards security, into working together with the Guyana Police Force. And I don't think persons, I know there will be persons, like you said in the example,
crossing the line.
Who would think because I gave to the Guyana Police Force that I could get away with anything. There will be those.
That is the issue.
There will be those, but I'm saying those are in the minority. They're in the absolute minority. I think there are persons in Guyana who want to work with the Guyana Police Force, who want to see certain changes happen within their communities with the young people, and are willing to contribute towards that. And I don't think we should rob them of that opportunity, because I can use the converse in the argument. So the government gives to the police force for these things. So then they believe they're beholden to the government. They have to be extra loyal to the government. And if
they have
not,
a responsibility as a state.
Exactly. So the police force, I believe, they have a duty at the end of the day to serve and protect, to maintain their integrity, So even if Big Smith or James Bond says, look, I want this done, illegal, it is if you have a professional force, if you have a force of integrity, leaders in the force of integrity, they can say, look, sir, not because you gave me $20,000 mean, or $2 million, or how much ever, that I must compromise my integrity for you. And that is the level of professionalism that is in the first world. Because if you're aware, there are galas, fundraising galas for the chiefs of police. They raise funds from corporate society to do these same projects. So there's nothing new. But what we do need, and I would go for that point any day, is a police force that is above reproach. That is what is needed. And not just trying to shift or change the relationship or the dynamic between citizen and the Ghana police force. So again, I've seen the work that has been done. They've done their pageants, they've done their camps, they have sports, and that is something I want to say augments the work of other agencies that are doing that. Because if you understand youth, it is so wide. Youth programs of the government do not reach down to every single youth. That's a reality. Youth program of the Ministry of Youth, Sport and Culture do not extend directly to every youth. These youth groups, sporting groups, if it's, I'm not going to knock anybody here. If it's the chess federation, the badminton federation, or the basketball federation, they don't touch every single youth. So I think when it comes to youth, you need all hands on deck. And the Ghana Police Force is playing this part. And I must commend them to that. So those are three challenges that I would have seen. One in education, the one in crime, and the one that access to wealth. Another personal challenge that I see is especially with young women. And I'm not knocking young women here because I have a daughter, not biological, but there's two young girls that I've been taking care of for years. And I've witnessed something personally. There are still a number of sexual predators out there who target young girls. And it is something that is touched close home to me. And it hurt as a man, you know, as a father, as that, you know, your young girl is exposed to this kind of thing. And it is something that is prevalent. It's not just you. If you check, and I don't know if there's statistics, but if you were to talk to a number of young ladies around, I'm talking about teens here, I'm not talking about big women, I'm talking about teens here, the kind of exposure they get to illicit substances, sexual and predatory cultures, it is amazing that from school right up, home, school, they're exposed to these things, and that is a challenge for young ladies. I think the young women, the young professional women, the women who would have, who are now established, should partner with girls and women who've been through these kind of things, and try to reach out and help young girls. I know there's work being done. I'm not saying there's nothing being done. There's work being done. There are a lot of women out there who are working on these type of programs, but I'm saying that we could do a bit more. You know, we could do a bit more for young girls, especially children, preteens and teens, to protect them from a lot of these predators, male predators that we find in our societies and in the homes where these girls exist. So those are the challenges that I would have experienced as the businessman.
As we're on the issue of the sexual predators and so on, I think the sexual offences bill, the amended one, which Ms. Manik-Chan took to Parliament in, I think, somewhere around, while she was Minister of Human Services. It is referred to as one of the most draconian pieces of legislation we have in this country. Do you think it serves? Do you think it serves well enough, or do you think that I know the magistrates and the judges, they will make decisions based on what is before them and so on, but do you think they're using it correctly? They're using it appropriately in service to the victims?
The victims encounter a lot of protections. They have a lot of protections, for example, in terms of when they give evidence, in terms of exposing them to seeing the person, the accused, in terms of how the questionings that they're now asked. There are a number of protections that are given towards.
And by that I also mean sentencing too.
Yeah.
The judgments which are handed down.
There are a lot of protections that are given to the victims. As a defense lawyer, it's now harder to win cases. I could tell you, I lost a case a few years ago. Of course, I was of the view that my client was innocent. He was, but he was found guilty, and he was sentenced to 20 years. 20 years, I think it's 40 years total, 2 counts of sexual activity with a minor. So I believe that it is a strict piece of legislation, and there are protections given to the victims. But you see, the legislation, there's nothing like a perfect legislation, and there will never be a perfect application of the legislation. I think what I try to, when I speak on these things, is try to show that there needs to be a collaboration. If you look at from start to finish, from the detection of the offense, to the prosecution in the investigation of the offense, to the prosecution of the offense. Those are the 3 stages: detection, investigation, and prosecution. Once you have those things in place, once the systems in place are solid at those ends, then you have a result. Then you have a society that benefits from the legislation, because you have the best laws. You have the best laws. But once you can't detect the crime, once you can't investigate the crime, once you can't prosecute the crime, then you run into trouble. And we again, that's what the emphasis, I think, it should be on. I think they had established special desks at the Guyana police stations to deal with these things, rooms to deal with these things, special persons to deal with these things. This was not before. So I made a post on social media, the progress we made in 10 years. You know, we have not progressed a lot in 10 years, last decade. We have not seen a lot of progress. If you judge progress.
And this is generally or just in the
generally, again, in every single sphere. You are not seeing that amount of progress. Persons might see a big building going up in Georgetown, or 2 buildings going up in Georgetown, or this business is coming here, or that business is coming here. But Guyana is 83,000 square miles, 700-something thousand people. If the country, if the benefits, if everything is not touching and concerning 83,000 square miles, 700-something thousand people, and if you come to the diaspora, say 1 million people, then you're not progressing as much as you should. And I think not just with these offenses, but in terms of our human rights record, we're not progressing as well. I don't think people are the priority for governments. I don't think people are the priority for institutions. There's a lack of focus on people generally in Guyana. And you see that coming out, whether it's in the hospitals, whether it's on the roadways. We don't have that kind of love for people growing up. I could tell you we had tremendous love for one another, but now it's kind of, you know, the drive is not to progress as together as a people.
Where do you see the drive and the focus being placed?
I think it's on things. It's on shiny things, the shiny things. A building up here, a vehicle there, you know, it's on the shiny things. It's not on the people. We're not investing enough in people. And again, this is not to say there's not being any investment. I got a scholarship from the government, so there has to be some investment. You know, so, but there's not that, I want to say that drive to let us lift the people by the bootstraps.
I'm curious to ask, which one of the governments?
In 10 years, we've had changes 3 times. If you could,
No, I'm talking about the scholarship.
Oh, yeah, I got a scholarship under the PPP.
Okay.
Yeah, I got a scholarship under the PPP. That was
From
in
gold?
2000, in 97.
Okay,
97, yeah. I was one of the last persons he actually gave scholarship to in law. A public, they were, I think it was a group of 5 or 6 of us
Okay.
who got a scholarship to do law in 97, 98, I think that was.
Who are the others? Can you recall?
I can't recall. Yeah, I can recall, but I doubt that I could mention their names. They're magistrates in there.
Okay.
They're seniors, they're senior officers in judiciary now.
Okay.
So I don't want to call them out. But there's, and this is not a problem with governments, you know. I want to say this is not a problem with political parties. It's not a problem with political parties. It's a problem with Guyana. You know, if you change politics today from one political party, other political party, this problem will still exist. Because the Guyanese, the people, we tend to shift. We've shifted away from being our brother's keepers. You know, it's a more selfish society. It's a more society that caters to, I'm going to make X look good or Y look good to the deference of the entire country. And I think we need to get back to developing the human capital of the country, whether it's, again, in access into finances, access to education, access to land, these things to free movement throughout Guyana. That is such a critical thing that we have not addressed that after how many years of independence? In 66?
I think we have free movement. I think the
No, we
challenge,
don't.
or you're talking
when I say
about
we're free movement, I mean I
cost?
could jump on a car and I could drive to Region 1.
Okay. So
I can't access
interconnected,
Region
okay.
1, Region 978, 1978. Yeah, 1978.
I think you could drive to Region 7.
Could we access it?
Somewhere.
Could I jump in your vehicle, your X-Trail, and drive to X, Y, and Z? I can't. 1789. If I were to travel up the highway, it'll be a hassle. If I were to travel up the current, it'll be a hassle. You know, so I'm thinking we need free movement. And I don't mean free as you can't go. I mean easily
Maybe,
accessible. You know, and I think we need that throughout the length and breadth of Guyana. I was saying we need superhighways. I'm still having traffic jam on the East Coast. On the East Coast, where you have the railway embankment and a 4-lane carriageway, I have to leave a particular time.
But as we on the issue of the traffic jam, you would appreciate that there's some new housing areas opening too.
Again,
so,
if we have a vision for people and making the lives of people easier, we factor in everything.
Expand before we place.
Thank you very much. What we've been doing is just, it's almost ad hoc. You must admit, we see some empty land here, there, let's do a housing scheme there. There's not enough thinking going or planning going. And there are people, I think, in Guyana who have tremendous skills in urban planning, who have tremendous skills in these kind of things. I think the president has a doctorate in something like that.
I know he worked at the State Planning Secretariat.
No, but I think his PhD is with urban planning and how you develop communities, grow communities in a kind of holistic manner.
I think one of the things he said the other day, because I grilled him with respect to these expansions and so on, and I was also asking him about the need for a contractor general in this country. I think what he basically said in essence is these things will come, but we can't sit and wait on them, because while we sit and wait, we have 500 people who are waiting for house lots or so. So we do that, we try to give them house lots, and then we try to do something simultaneously. Maybe we're working a bit too slow, you think, as a country?
I believe we're going too slow as a country, and it's not because of impatience. I tend to look at things in terms of an adult child. If you are an adult 30, 40, 50 years in, you're supposed to get certain things right. You're no longer 10 years, you're no longer 5-year-old. Guyana's been independent since 1966. We've had an opportunity to get a lot of things right. And they were examples of getting things right. And I'm saying that for where we are in 2022, with the resources we have in 2022, with the people we have in 2022, we should have been much more advanced in 2022. We're still ranking just above Haiti. And isn't that a shame? The countries that gain independence with us around the same time as us are more advanced than us. The majority of them. The countries that we form CARICOM with are more advanced than us. And we are more wealthier than them. If this does not provoke you to want more, then I don't know what will. Because we travel, we see places, and you kind of feel disappointed when you go there and you see it's simpler. There's more trust amongst the people. There's more of patriotism amongst the people. That pride, mature. That's a beautiful word. That's a word I like to use with politics. Should go hand in hand.
We get into there. We get into the maturity.
Yeah. So there's so much you want from your country. It's out of a love for the country that I tend to have these views. All right? I could survive. We could all survive and exist in Guyana, however it is. Some persons will say they survived this era or that era. We will survive, but I think now is not the time for survival. We have to live. We have to enjoy what this country has to offer. A lot of the companies that come into Guyana, they promise to do X, Y, and Z. They don't, and they have all these tax breaks. They get all of our wealth, and these are things that in 2022, when we've had so much history, that we should be making better decisions and making better choices to push and advance our people at a much faster rate.
So let's get to so we did the jurisprudence or the judiciary. We spoke about the youth, politics, and business. Well, let's talk about business now before we get into in fact, I think we touched on business, but let's just wrap it up on business before we get to politics. How has business been? You have, when you started, was it just before the pandemic? Just before the pandemic. And then you also, well, let's talk about that. How has business been from then to now? Obviously, things would have changed, but how was it?
It's been, like I said, it's a challenge from day one. During the pandemic, the business was formed. During the pandemic, that it was actually formed. I used to do the cigars because I love cigars. I love cognac. I've been drinking. My mom is now watching this. I've been drinking Hennessy since in my 20s. You know, my mom and dad, they're both pastors, and I believe in Yeshua. Yeshua is my Lord and Savior.
You go to church?
I don't go to church.
When last you fellowship?
I haven't fellowship in about a year or more. But I do, how do I put it? I have strong connections, spiritual connections. Just the way that, and this could be a critique. I have not been able to identify, this is a critique on my own part. I have not been able to identify with a building, so to speak. And these are my views. I know persons have their own views. And Scripture speaks of not of forsaking the assembly, the brethren, etc. But I do have spiritual counseling. I do call, and I could say his name. I do call my dad, Reverend Leslie Bond. I do call Pastor Nigel London whenever I need a spiritual guidance.
That's the pastor from Linden?
Yes, whenever I need spiritual guidance, so to speak. So, but I've not been able to identify with a church or a building. This is somebody who grew up in church.
You pray every morning though?
I don't pray every morning. I pray almost every 2 or 3 times a week. I do make sure that I check in with my Heavenly Father. You know,
I pray every morning, every single
I know. I do it like for a good
and
stretch.
Every evening.
Yeah, I do it for a good stretch. Like, so I would wake up like every morning, every morning I wake up around 4, minutes to 4, and I would say, thank you, God. Thank you, Lord, for, that kind of thing.
Yeah, but I do something similar to that. And it's like for about a minute, And then sometimes I'll pray for my staff, I'll pray for my business and stuff.
Yeah, I do that.
And it
But
really
I'm not
helps
like,
a lot.
I'm not like a daily devotion person. That's something I need to improve on. Like I said, I have a lot of work to do on my own spiritual life, because I believe, what shall it profit a man to gain the whole world and yet lose his own soul? So Yeshua is my Lord and Savior. I acknowledge him. I walk with him every single day. I may not be praying and fasting every single day, but everything about me, and I let people know that I can do only things through Christ who strengthens me. So it's never about if I'm in church every day, or if I'm worshiping, or I do worship God in my own time, my own moments. But even though I've not been grounding with a particular building or a particular ministry, you know, God is with me.
You've had a few outbursts in the during the pandemic stages and so on, with respect to business and police visiting and so on. What were really the tipping moments that caused those outbursts and so on?
I must acknowledge, and that's something I've been doing recently, is being accountable for my actions. I was at fault in some of those instances. I was at fault. I was breaking the law in some of those instances. But a lot of those instances also, the police, they wronged me. They wronged me. They targeted me. And I'm not one to focus on the past, because we've mended that relationship. We've been able to mend that relationship, and now forgiveness. Again, I've forgive, and I've moved forward, and I now work with the Ghana Police Force. There's no COVID now for anybody to target me, so there's no benefit on my part. But being the person who I've tried to be recently, the person that forgives, and the person who tries to be a better man, I've moved on from that. But in a lot of instances, I was targeted. For I don't know for what reason. Persons were naming race and politics and all that, but I never saw it as that. The only thing that I could have simply seen was that persons thought we were growing a bit too fast. That's all I saw it, because if you know how Cigars and Connect started, I started with a wood hut, and then I moved into a small space, and then it started to grow, and we started to just put all the resources, the monies we were getting into the infrastructure. And I think that would have rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, because my issue was, I'm not the only bar that is open. I'm not the only person. But you allow Tom to open, you allow Sean to open, but you come at James Bond. And that was my biggest issue. I'm saying, if you're going to do this, do it to everybody. You know, do it to everybody. Don't just come to me. And then there was one instance in particular where I wasn't even open. The music wasn't playing. Not, and the guy seized my laptop, my work laptop, snatched it out of the guy's hand. We won that case. We actually sued the state. We won that case. The state has some money for me, but I would collected that. You know, I really tried to collect it. You know, because it was not about the money, so to speak. It was just making a point. Yeah, that I was wronged. You know, the guys were actually programming the cameras, and the police snatched it out of his hand. And I went to them. I'm saying, this is my work laptop. This is what I use on a daily basis to work. And you know, that laptop damaged in a few weeks. I had to replace it. Yeah. So I don't know, man. So I went through a lot, and I lost a lot of business. I lost a lot of money. But again, it was a learning experience. Now business has slowed down a bit, but we're still open. We're still employing our people. We're still helping people. We're still helping the communities. We celebrated with 2 elderly couples just recently in Melanie area. This year, I plan doing the same Christmas hampers that we normally do. So we're still planning on doing our part for all the communities around, whether or not business is good or business is bad. I've always been a giver. I've always been about people, young people, old people. I've always been about people. I grew up in a house with missionaries, and I can remember my father, our clothes we would give to the Armenian communities. or food stuff, give to the Amerindian communities. So that is something that is in me. And so our business is doing well. We in terms of giving back. We started a new business in the front. I must give a big shout out to my partners, Mr. Floyd Arthur, Christiana Ross. Floyd Arthur, he's taken this one to another level, starting a brand new barbershop on the Melanie Public Road. Mm-hmm. Nice barbershop with about 6 or so chairs, with a mini salon. So we're going into that. We have also a car rental. We have 2 vehicles, two cars that we normally rent to persons. So we've been doing, there being spin-offs to cigars and cognacs. It's not just about the cocktails and the
I see Calista writing, so I'm wondering if she's probably preparing the invoice for you for these ads.
Yeah.
You were referred to as a slave and some other things when an image circulated with you holding an umbrella for Azruddin Mohammed. Yeah. Speak to that.
That is something that I find funny. And that's something I really, really find funny. Because people tend to put you in a category. I mean, they don't know you, they don't know what you stand for. They don't know a lot of things they miss. But
including who are your friends for years?
Who are your friends, yes. A lot of things they miss. And they tend to look at it through these lenses of race and politics. And I think I was kind of disappointed that intelligent people would make it about race. Would make it about race. I don't have a racial bone in my body. And so that naivety, I think, makes me sometimes miss what people are seeing. Mm-hmm. I could understand a racist seeing a young black man with a young Indian man, and this young black man holding the umbrella for a young Indian man. I could see someone who is not only a racist, but who probably sees himself in a kind of different light. That that this is not this man's brother. That we're not from the single family, the same family of God. Mm-hmm. That one of them somehow is greater than the other. Jesus was the head. I would say Yeshua was the head, and he washed the disciples' feet. They can't appreciate someone who is intelligent, someone who has risen in politics, serves a parliamentarian, who has a profession, everything like that, holding an umbrella for someone else because he's of a different race. And I would advise every single Guyanese, I don't care what race you're from, there's certain things you must understand.
This one is your camera.
Yeah, there's certain things you must understand, especially dealing with me, is that my upbringing, as I tell people every day, you got to understand how I grow. I didn't know I was black until I came out to Georgetown. Mm-hmm. I grew up with Amerindians, Chinese, mixed Indians, everyone in Mabaruma. That's Mabaruma I know of when I was a child. Mm-hmm. All right, I got my first scholarship was an Indigenous people scholarship. So I got a scholarship because I was in Mabaruma. And so the way we lived is different from the way you live in Georgetown. Mm-hmm. We didn't know about, I never know about a fence and a gate until I come to town. That is why if you come to my place, you see I have like an open house. Mm-hmm. I hardly have furniture. I hardly have locks on doors. I have a gate. There's no padlock on the gate. I have my dogs, of course. But I grow different. I grow very different. So for me to reach out or to hang with or to be seen with a person of another race, that is normal for me. That is absolutely normal for me. So Azruddin Mohammed is a friend of mine, and I've said it over and over again. I was there when President Muhammad and his dad, they contributed to, this is public knowledge now, contributed to AP and UFC, the party that I am involved in.
Well, I know that for a fact.
For a
and
fact.
It's one of the reasons I sometimes try to understand.
And I'm saying, why are you knocking this guy? This guy is one of the guys. And if you see what he's doing now, he's giving to Tom, Dick, Harry, everybody, irrespective of race,
but
irrespective
mostly
of
in your
politics.
constituents also.
He's given to our country. He started the ground, but because we had the issues that the ground in Melanie that he started, we've not been able to finish it and complete it. So this is the person now that you're knocking, who's done more for your community than you could ever do. And he doesn't have to do it, but he does it. And you're knocking this guy, and I think he has a high level of tolerance because he still contributes to the demographic that enjoys his.
I don't think he or anybody in his position would allow politicians, especially politicians who you've given to cause you to stop giving to the average man on the street who needs it. But I think when that time comes again, when you need his help as a politician or as a political party, I think that's where the problem might come, because then is where you may not be able to get a cent.
Well, that is why you have to be careful of how you criticize and who you criticize. You have to know people. You have to know what they're about, what their agenda is. You have to know their history. And I don't think because someone looks like a particular way that you automatically assume that they're the enemy. And I think that is the problem with Guyana. We tend to base our enemies on what people look like as opposed to what they do. What is he doing that's inimical to the interests of you as a community, as a political party, as an organization? Is there anything that he's doing that's inimical to your interests? If then, you have an issue, but if not, I don't see the issue. So that old umbrella gate is something that I found very, very laughable, but I found it disturbing. And it is something that should not even have been a discussion. It should have been look, these two friends. That should have been the talk. These two friends come together and shared out. We shared hundreds of hampers on the East Coast that day, Hundreds. At Cigars and Cognac. Hundreds of hampers were shared out by T. Mohammeds on the East Coast. And persons, instead of focusing on what was done, the act of kindness, the act of love, simply just painted it in this racist light. And that was extremely disturbing. But again, I found it laughable. If I had it, I would hold an umbrella for him every single day. And anybody I would hold an umbrella for. If you were to come at me, Leroy, I would hold an umbrella for you. It doesn't make me less of a man or less of an individual. If I were to do that for you, I open doors for people. So many acts of kindness we do, because this person is genuinely your friend, someone you love as a person. So what is the issue there?
If you've just joined us, you're looking at Focus. This is Focus. My name is Leroy Smith, and we're speaking with Attorney at Law James Bond. We're discussing politics, youth, the judiciary, and business. So, and we're on the home stretch now. So we've discussed all of these things. So we'll now get to the politics.
Yes.
Where do we start?
The beginning is always a good place. The beginning is always a good place.
Do you feel the APNU AFC rigged the elections in 2020?
No, I want to make this emphatically clear. And persons have been
or were
trying to
there
get
malpractices by people in the party that should not have taken place?
I want to put this perspective because I was asked this question before.
Publicly?
Yes, I think it was on the Gildari Kisoon show. And I was letting them know that there's levels to this thing. There's levels. First and foremost, the information that would come down to myself at a particular level. I can't say I know or I don't know. But what I could tell people is this. Election was 2020. There were a number of issues. and persons focus on the issue at Region 4. But I tell people over and over again, it is not just Region 4 that there were issues. There are issues right through. So whether to say that I say, well, AP and UFC regulation, no, I will never say that. I will never say that, oh, could you call a name? Regulations? No. I mean, I was at the Georgetown district. I was a deputy campaign manager with the Georgetown district. All we did was man our polling stations, get together our statements of poll, and I think we did our tabulations, and that was that. At the level of GCOM, it's impossible for me to give you an answer. I would only be guessing. You know, none of us were there. We would probably be at Hartfield Street or on GCOM, but none of us were there planning or. Let me speak for myself. I can speak for myself, and I can speak for a few persons at Georgetown District. Let me be the lawyer here. Let me be the lawyer here. I could speak for myself, and I could speak for persons who were with me at Georgetown District. And I could say none of us were ever in any scheme to rig an election. Everything was unfolding before our eyes. We had limited knowledge from Regions 4 declaration to how it came about, to Regions 1, to the issues in regions on the East Coast with all those missing poll books. There's no way that I could say, well, you know something, James Bond has knowledge of X, Y, and Z, or how this happened, or the people who were within my circle.
Do you think the party should have distanced itself from the numbers which were not corresponding on the statement of polls by the political parties?
Of course. Let me just, that's an easy answer. I think at some level, if you're seeing, and like I said, we had Georgetown's, we had statement of the poll for Georgetown. At some point, if you're seeing that you have a number here, but this number is not what is that is coming out there, you have a responsibility to ask a question. Maybe questions were asked of, I don't know, I can't say. But I think any politician with integrity, if you're seeing X, Y, or Z, you have to ask a question. What is going on here? That's an easy answer. If you believe in democracy, if you believe in freedom, the freedoms that elections bring and elections guarantee, those freedoms must be protected. And you need to ask a question. I'm seeing 10 here, but in my book I have 3. Where did this extra 7 come from? I think you owe yourself, your conscience that. You owe yourself your conscience that. Forget about winning an election. I think at the end of the day,
anybody forgets about winning an election? Anybody forgets about winning an election?
No, I know of persons who've graciously accepted defeat. I know a lot of politicians who, again, it doesn't seem that case. I remind persons when Donald Ramatar lost, there was a hoorah. There was a big hoorah. There was calls of rigging elections and thieving elections from the PP that were leaving in 2015. They claimed the elections was rigged.
Yes, they did.
You know, so in Guyana, there are no gracious losers. There's no gracious losers. It's a win at all costs. It's not only win at all costs, but win and then try to crush your opponent. You know, try to crush him at all costs. So we need a different culture, and that's where the maturity comes in. That's where I want to say a new political culture must come in. We must give birth to a new political culture.
There were certain statements made by some very young um, politicians or political activists and so on within these parties and candidates for the polls. I don't know if you're familiar, but if you are, do you believe that some of the statements made by some of the young people in politics at the time in 2020 would have, in essence, affected their political career going forward, will taunt their political careers going forward?
Politics has a way that things that you say live after you. I can remember in my own instance, I could speak personally from my own instance. I can remember there's a video or a clip with me. I was actually purchasing water. I don't know if persons could remember on breakdown. I was purchasing water and drink for protesters who were gathered. All along, if persons do, and I know there are persons who bear witness to this, I was the person, day in, day out, keeping calm on the streets, telling people, we're not going to be burning, we're not going to be looting, don't let nobody set you up. Trying to keep people calm, because President Granger's decision was, whatever GCOM says, whenever GCOM makes a declaration, we'll abide by it. So we had to be patient until GCOM made that declaration. So leading up to that declaration, even though it took how much ever long it took, leading up to that, I was the person, one of the persons, let me say one of the persons who were every day trying to keep people calm, using my own resources. And persons twist that to think I was bribing people to go and do nonsense. So even in politics, it's damn if you do, damn if you don't. What I find persons are doing now is Trumpesque in nature. Is that you could go to extremes. And I could give, I don't want to call names, I don't want to be negative, I don't want to show the negative light on those persons' careers. But they're on both sides, in which they have said inflammatory statements. Inflammatory statements from both sides. Young politicians, even all senior politicians. But you know what's the problem? There's no accountability. The electorate, there's a level of docility and complicity in the electorate in Guyana, because we do not hold our leaders accountable. There are some leaders who could do anything and get away with it. They couldn't do that in a first world country or a second world country. You know, so yes, these statements that they would have made, every 2 mornings you're going to hear in some little one-liner, oh, he said this in Parliament, or he said this there, or he said that there. But there is no repercussion. There's no political repercussion for those statements. You know, and that's a bad culture. We need to have a culture whereby we hold people accountable. I think that's politically I'm talking about here, and not thinking, oh, this is a political unicorn. We can't touch him. We can't touch her. You know, at the minute you start to do that, you start to devalue the importance of what it is to be a person of integrity, to be a person above reproach, in a politician. Because as you know, where most persons think about politicians, it's in a bad light. It's in a terribly bad light. And again, that's because there is no accountability. You don't find politicians apologizing for stuff they would have said. You don't find politicians resigning for egregious mistakes they would have made. And that's a bad culture. We have a lot of rotten eggs on both sides of the divide. But they're still their rotten eggs. They will not give birth to any chicks, but they're rotten eggs.
You have any politician on either side of the divide that you look up to, or that inspire you?
And that's another thing too. I see some politicians doing a good job. Let me just put it this way. I'm not easily inspired. And I could go to a statement I would have made. Let me just say the politicians I think who are doing a good job. I think they're doing a good job of reaching the people of this country. Okay. Of course, His Excellency, the President, reaches a lot of Guyanese, and that's impressive. The opposition leader, Aubrey Norton, also doing a good job of meeting a lot of Guyanese people. Those are two persons, the top that I see reaching out and seeing a lot of people. I like the work that Minister of Social Cohesion, I think Human Services, Dr. Vinya Prasad, that she does. I like the work that Jeremy Figueroa does in his community. I don't want to name too many names.
Because if you forget some,
if I forget some, then you're not going to hear James Bond this
Yeah.
and James Bond that. So those are persons I see that they still have maintained that touch with the ordinary Guyanese. There's some ministers who, I think Minister Manik Chan, I think she has improved a lot from.
Yeah, I was telling somebody that the other day.
From when she was first Minister of Education.
She's gotten more mature. She's a little more reserved now with respect to how she addresses issues and so on.
Yeah, she's improved a lot from the last time that she was Minister of Education.
I think she probably provides counsel to a lot of the new ones now.
How she's been interacting with the teachers and the students across the country is commendable.
She generally, as we were on the subject of Manik Chan, I think she generally has a way where she adopts and like fit in. At Human Services, I think she was finding her way and what's not. But then when she's really, as you said, show that I'm trying to find the appropriate word, but education has really brought out a lot of who she is and so on. And I'm wondering if I was even saying to somebody the other day, maybe we need to send her at every other ministry for a stint of 5 years if they're there for so long, or whenever they're out and come back, put her somewhere so that, you get a kind of response and change in the direction of those ministries. With respect to the politicians, and this is now us going way to the home stretch, what are your views on the former president, his handling of the entire process from no confidence motion to his exit from office, your views on the current president, and your views on the current leader of the opposition?
All right. I want to tell you this here. My grandmother always say, if you got nothing good for say, don't say nothing at all. I could critique former President Granger's handling of a lot of things, but I always say, heavy is the head that wears the crown, and the decisions he would have made as the president, in his opinion, or where he was with the given set of circumstances, I believe he made the best decision from no confidence motion to the handing over of power. I think he did his best. Let me just say this, and say this publicly, because I want this to be for an eternal record. I could critique everything he did from my own perspective. I could critique everything he did, and everyone could, because we all have an opinion. But I would say that he did everything to the best of his ability, from no confidence motion to elections to the handing over. Because in the set of circumstances, as a leader, the pressures that are brought to bear upon you,
especially as a president?
Precious as president, in his shoes, I think the mere fact that we did not descend into civil war is because of his leadership. His patience, his deliberation, he has a deliberate mind, in that I want to see this play out. He could have gone south, you know. People don't realize this here. You could end up in a dictatorship. People don't realize that. You could have ended up in a dictatorship. You could have ended up with a totalitarian ruler. But you had someone who's saying, I will respect the process. I will accede to the request of the then opposition leader, Barra Jagdeo, to hold a recount. Looking out, we could say, now he was a fool for that. Looking out. We criticize him. Says, why are you accepting what the CARICOM leaders are saying or Jagdeo is saying? Forget about them. You do what you want to do. You know, people could say that. But he agreed to recount, signed on to it, went through a process for the recount. So it wasn't the people that I know the people like to say, oh, they had to wait X, Y, and Z months. That's your doing. That's your doing. That's what you wanted. You wanted a recount. CARICOM wanted a recount. And the president says, in the best interest of the country, let us have a recount. He could have taken a number of steps. He could have enforced martial law. He could have said, well, I'm president for life now because he's commander-in-chief of the armed forces. He could have done a lot of things. But I think where he was, he said, let me put country first. As a president, let me put country first. And I'm saying, the mere fact that we did not end up in civil war, that we did not end up in a dictatorship, that at the end of the day is you had a peaceful swearing in of Irfan Ali, you got to give the president, Granger, some amount of credit. You may not like it because you're thinking of a selfish power. You're thinking of a power at all costs, acquiring and achieving power at all costs. And for some politicians, you have to have that ruthless nature in you. I will achieve and keep power at all costs. But there is something called integrity and accountability in the day. Now, what president would you be at the end of your tenure when you're deposed of? Because most times, you know, the dictators and totalitarian rulers, they're deposed of. What will that do for your legacy? What will that do for your country? So that is my take on President Granger. That's my take on President Granger from now forever. I don't want to go back on say anything else. So what he did in a given set of circumstances that he would have faced, he did to the best of his ability. I'm no Granger fan. Let me let people know. I'm no fan of President Granger, but I could be honest here. I think I could criticize him, and I want this to be on record too, that he's a bad judge of talent, very bad and poor judge of talent. I think he became grossly out of touch. How could you be president for so long and your major constituencies are the most disgruntled? Your main constituency is the most disgruntled.
And unserved.
I don't think about unserved because a lot of things were put in place to address the issues in a major constituency.
Why weren't they rolled out? Or
no, there was a number. I'm like, I could defend his record here. I don't want to say unserved. I'm saying they're disgruntled. Because one, if you look at the public service sector, in which the public sector, the discipline forces, etc., which comprise of predominantly Afro-Guyanese supported, UPMFC, there are tremendous increases in terms of salaries, etc. In terms of starting up of small businesses, there were a lot of core programs in these ministries, SLED, etc., that were geared towards helping small businesses come along. There was a lot of expansion being done in the rural areas, bringing internet, you name it. A lot was done. So the service and the delivery to the people was never an issue. Never an issue. You can't knock AP and EFC for that. But I think a lot of the persons, the urban areas in Georgia, they became disgruntled because one, they weren't seeing anybody. You know, President Granger never went to Savannah. I took him in Savannah in 2012, Yes?
That's David Granger,
David Granger.
not president.
Yeah. You have to still reform him as president.
No, I'm talking about before the presidency.
Yeah, before presidency. We went into Sophia. Joshua never saw him back. In terms of, you saw him back at rallies, but he wasn't doing walkabouts in Tiger Bay. He wasn't doing walkabouts in Queenstown. He wasn't doing walkabouts in Camberville. You know, a lot of people, and this is Guyanese politics here, they just want to see you. They just want to see you. Half of your work as a politician is done by people just seeing you. And as a president, he robbed Region 4 of his presence. That is one thing. I think he did a great injustice to young people. Since 2015, someone asked me, what is my disappointment? I said, if I have any views, I'm saying the only thing I'm very much disappointed about is that there are not enough young people in Parliament. I think there's that clip, I think it was on News Source. I think it was Gordon Mosley, he wasn't News Source then. I think it was Gordon Mosley, I think, at that time. I think it was one of those guys interviewed me. I said, there's not enough young people. I don't know if there was a distrust for young people. Young people don't understand this. Young people will make mistakes. But once you got the good guidance, once you got good heads around you, they're going to be good. They will be good. But you got to give young people the opportunity. And that is something that he robbed young people of, I think, in his presidency. So I could critique a number of things. But in terms of the handling of the 2020 elections, I gave him full marks for that. You know, because I know it could have gone south. You know, another leader there, this country you'd still be seeing smoke. You get my point? You'll still be seeing smoke a day like today if was another leader there and not President Granger. So much kudos to him. I think you mentioned
Opposition Leader Norton.
Yeah.
When we get to the Opposition Leader Norton, I'd also like to know your views on the handshake saga.
All right.
In
and again, I said this publicly. I will never criticize. I will never, ever, ever criticize the current opposition leader, Aubrey Norton. I will never, ever criticize the current president, Irfanati. So I will never have any negative views for them. Any negative views, I could express it to them. But I would not publicly express a negative view of Aubrey Norton. If he doesn't want to shake a hand, or if he shakes a hand, I will never, if it's,
well, my question wasn't, let me make it clear, my question wasn't necessarily to solicit a negative view. I need to know your views on them.
On Aubrey Norton as a politician?
And President.
And President Granger?
President Ali.
Ali?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Aubrey Norton, the opposition leader, he has been dealt a hand. If you understand what I mean, is that he's been given a basket to carry. The AP and EFC is not popular. There's a lot of rebuilding to do, a lot of rebranding to do in the eyes of the international community, in the eyes of the business community, in the eyes of persons who support the PPP, the civil society. I think his job as opposition leader is the hardest of any opposition leader we've ever had, even to Cherry Jagan.
Jack, you didn't give Corbyn an easy time?
No, Corbyn does not have the kind of challenges that Aubrey Norton now face. This is when Aubrey Norton became opposition leader. If you know, he had to wait. He had to wait. He was the leader of the PNC and everything else, and he had to wait to go to Parliament. And when he took over Parliament, when he took over opposition leader, his party's in tatters. The party's in tatters. A lot of fractionism. The party's in tatters. The country is against his party. The world is against his party because everyone, the media, everyone is saying APNU AFC is responsible for the events of 2020. So you don't have friends in the diplomatic community. You don't have friends in the business community. You don't have friends in civil society. And again, the people who support the PPP, of course, not your friends. So he has the toughest job of now trying to rebrand and rebuild his political party, create an image for himself, because he has to create an image for himself of what? kind of opposition leader he'll be, one, and what kind of president he can be, two, in the event that he wins an election.
So he's been turning down interviews. He stood us up on 3 occasions.
Could I say this here? And again,
No, I'm not asking you to say
again,
but
he's probably busy. I don't hold any brief for him, but he's probably busy. But again, he has a tough task. And as it is, he has the toughest task as a politician in Guyana. He's the toughest task. And again, his strengths have been the people. His strengths have been reaching to his constituencies. His strengths have been reaching across the length and breadth of Guyana, crisscrossing the length and breadth of Guyana, and trying to rebuild and rebrand the image of the PNC, the image of AP and UAFC. I saw him meeting with the British ambassador, the US ambassador. I've seen him meeting with business communities as well. I know certain statements that they would have made, rub the private sector commission the wrong way. But all that is a part of trying to rebuild your brand. Rebuild your brand.
You got to make a few
you got
unpopular comments and things.
But he has to rebuild the brand. I think he's trying. He's trying. Of course, like in any other thing, there will be challenges, and he must know those challenges, what those challenges are. But I do believe that once you get the right people around you, you must never be afraid of the best and the brightest. I tell people, I had a stint in President's College, and I saw Ronald Ross, Romesh Singh, and all these brilliant minds at work. And when you're around the best and the brightest, it elevates you. When you see these guys' work ethic, you started to study and try to match their kind. You can't keep up with them. I couldn't keep up with the kind of routine, regimentality, but at least I tried, and I became better as a student. And I think the fear with people in power is that they're afraid of the best and the brightest. They're mortally afraid of the best and the brightest, that someone outshines them. And I think that is something you should not fall into. Surround yourself with the best and the brightest. Do what it takes to woo them, because the best and the brightest are the ones who are going to have the vision and the ability to take what you need, execute what you want to do. You know, don't be afraid. I think the PNC, as it is now, there's a dearth of the best and the brightest, and we need a return to the best and brightest from wherever. If you check the minds we had back in the day, the Shahabuddins, Jackson, the Whites, you know, these guys were Murrays. These guys were the best and brightest in Guyana that Lyndon Forbes, Samson Burnham surrounded himself with.
You think Mr. Norton is surrounded by the best and the brightest?
No comment. No comment.
No comment.
No comment.
President A. Fanali.
Well, he's doing an exceptional job in terms of a president. I think he surprised a lot of people. He surprised a lot of people. I'm surprised. I am surprised. I never expected, especially the touching of the non-traditional bases. As a politician, that is critical. You know, touching a non-traditional base. For example, PNC man in the Indian area. You know, that's non-traditional. And he's been able to reach out to the non-traditional areas, and that is commendable as a president. It shows that he wants to govern Guyana and not just govern for his supporters. That's a good indication. Again, another credit is you can't ignore his leadership on the global sphere. And me personally may miss this, but the president of Guyana is a world leader. Is a world leader. His ideas on agriculture, his ideas on the extractive industries, his ideas on I mentioned agriculture, youth, tourism. Those ideas are on the world stage, and the world is paying attention to it. And even though I'm PNC, I could say good job. I could say well done, because whatever makes Guyana looks good, we look good. You know, I see him reaching out to Letitia Wright, who's our Guyanese. And when I see this, I'm like, this is just what Maya would have done. This is exactly what Maya would have done. And I hope he has, I know he's been around, sorry for saying Maya, Prime Minister Maya Motley, forgive me for that. It's exactly what Prime Minister Maya Motley would have done. And I hope he has the same kind of traits in terms of giving Letitia Wright one of those national awards. What a rhymer, what a something, you know, to put her, that when she goes out there, she now has the full backing of of Guyana.
The whole of Guyana, including the head
You
of
know,
state.
now she's actually saying Guyana, but she does not have the stamp of approval. I think this invitation and an award to follow, you have to honor her for the international community to see, look, there's a country behind this young woman now. There's a country behind this young woman now. There's not just Letitia Wright you're looking at now. This is Guyanese Letitia Wright. So once she gets...
It's like when you hear of Usain Bolt, you associate him with Jamaica.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Prime Minister Maya Motley did it for Barbados, Rihanna Barbados. Rihanna has the highest award Barbados could get for. She has the highest award. That's what Rihanna has. Bolt has the same thing. I think Bolt has a number 2 or number 3 award, but Bolt has a national award.
Michael might better be able to tell us.
You know, Bolt has a national award. So I'm saying when Letitia comes here, I know she will come. That, you know, we roll out the red carpet for her.
It's only invitation of a president.
No, people have done that. You know, people have done that. I know a lot of people were invited, and if I may harken back, a lot of people were invited to the White House and turned it down in America. Turned that down because who the president was in the White House. You know, so people turn down presidential invitations a lot. You know, but this is not. I don't think she'll turn this down. She should accept this here and accept the due honor that goes with it.
What do you think will define Irfan Ali's presidency, or what seems to be shaping the definition of his presidency, based on your observation?
If the president could do just one thing, alleviate poverty. Let me tell Guyanese something. There's a lot of people in Guyana.
I don't know if he needs schooling on it, but
I can't school anybody.
But if we're gonna suggest alleviating, you could also use the opportunity to suggest what we need to do as a country.
I've been saying that. I've been saying it regularly every 2 mornings on my Facebook page. Alleviation of poverty. It can be done by 2 ways. I was going to say Guyana has a lot of poor people. Guyana has too many poor people. It can be done 2 very simple ways. 1, raising the salaries of public employees. And 2, access to capital. Access to capital. Capital must be accessible to every single Guyanese. Easily, without the red tape. Let them use the right days and the potentialities to grow and to develop and to improve themselves. So if we raise, and I've given the skills, I saw this announcement that there will be a review of the skills and there will be increases to come. But I bet you there are going to be 5 and 10% increases. The minimum wage in Guyana should be $150,000. The minimum, $150,000. That's the least any public servant should get in Guyana. That's the least.
The private sector empty.
I'm sorry I didn't have the breakdown that I get. Nobody should take home less than $150,000. You know, I could tell people, I'm amazed at how we survive on these meager salaries. And I could tell you what, Leroy, what happens is, I sometimes have to get assistance. I have to get help sometimes. You know, me, James Bond, got to get help sometimes. So imagine what is happening to the ordinary person out there. You know, so many people have come to me, you won't believe it. For some when you won't, and they say, when I do extend it, like, it's like you did the world for them. And I'm talking about 25,000 and 20,000 and 15,000, these kind of things. You know? And that is why I'm continuously contributing to stuff because I know the struggles of the ordinary Guyanese. They're not seeing the money. We're built on trickle-down economics. Trickle-down is that if we take care of the richest of the rich, that somehow they're going to have this touch of conscience and start to distribute the wealth to the low. So the persons at the bottom have to wait. They're not getting it directly. They have to wait. And I'm saying, why make them wait? You're not making the top 1% wait. They're getting everything they're getting. All their tax breaks, all their fancy vehicles, all their allowances. They're getting everything they have to get right away. Why are you making the people who need it more wait? And that's why I say government don't care about poor people. Governments do not care about poor people. If governments care about poor people, they do more for poor people. They do more. They'll build more houses for poor people. They'll create more health centers for poor people. They'll create more schools for poor people. But this is not being done. All right? So they're not paying poor people more money. They're not allowing poor people to alleviate themselves out of poverty. So any president, if President Fernandez could do that, alleviate poverty, he'll go down easily as the greatest president in Guyana's history. Easily. Just make Guyana Guyanese. I won't say make them rich, make them financially
make them able
independent.
To live, make us able to live.
That they're financially independent, that they could live a life that they see on television. They could send their kids to good schools, they could drive whatever vehicles they want, they could go on a vacation. When last you go on a vacation? I can't tell you the last day I go on a vacation. I can't tell the last day I did that. I can't tell the last day I buy myself a shirt. My wife was going to buy me a shirt the other day, and I'm saying, you better keep that money. That's how bad it is. I'm telling you, that's me. Huh? It's not saying I'm broke. But no, we have to watch how we spend and what we spend.
And COVID has really taught us that.
Yeah. But people got rich in COVID. I mean, I don't want to sound crass, but Amazon made a lot of money in COVID. You know, my business did a bit okay in COVID.
I bought a vehicle during the pandemic, so
you bought a vehicle during the pandemic.
So somebody was like,
I don't want to.
Somebody's like, Levi, you buy a vehicle during a pandemic?
Yeah.
And I couldn't understand.
And the thing is, we have the people. You know, when you send us overseas, we dominate. When Guyanese go in these people, in the countries, in these other countries, we dominate. We excel.
I see the US asking for our teachers now. England has already started taking the nurses.
You know why? Because the quality. They had good training. My mom is a nurse. I could tell you about that. My mom was a chief nursing officer. She's at the Nursing Association now. Hi, Mom. Where's Nurse Bond? So the training they got is like what in the UK they were receiving, you know. So the UK would of course want what Guyana has, you know. We've had a good training, solid training, but we don't get paid for it. We don't get paid for it, you know. My mom and dad, they owned their house when they were way in their 40s. You know, that's crazy, huh? And there's a lot of people who have had backlog, like someone's telling me since 2012. They applied for a house lot and they get it. Since 2012. And I think now the ministry is saying the backlog they're dealing with is 2014, 2015. The backlog that they're actually at. We were in 2022. So when are the person in 2022 going to get?
2015.
That's like 2014, 2015.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So when are the persons who applied in 2022 going to get theirs? 2029, 2030. Again, we're making everybody else get what they have to get. But the people who need it most, they're not getting it. Build houses, put them in, work out a way for them to pay back the monies. Do it, let the government do it. The government don't want to be competing with this and compete with that. But there's a point where government has to do and not wait on the private sector and wait on some other person to come and do for the poor people. Government has to do. Take that risk on the people.
Local government elections are going to be held next year, March, another March elections.
Yeah.
Do you have a message for the young people out there?
I think every person, young, old, in between, you must get involved politically. Look, government elections have always been very underattended. You know, there have not been the kind of seriousness attached to local government elections. But I think those elections are extremely critical because that is politics at a local level.
Do you believe it's because they don't understand the importance of it, or what it does, what local government elections is all about? You think that might be?
No, I think everyone knows the importance of the NDC. We all know when the garbage is not being picked up on time, when no roads are being done, when they're not doing other services, and when we can't get our plans executed in a timely manner. We all know the struggles of the NDC.
And the person that get a chicken pen right next
yes,
to you.
We all know of that. So to say that we're not educated to know the impact of a NDC, a strong NDC, I don't think that's the issue. What I think is the major parties needed to have a different approach. For one, do we need to have the major parties in these local elections? Do we need to see, or do we allow the leadership to come from the people? Let them form themselves into their own groups and contest these elections. That's one approach. And then the other approach is, how much is government investing in these NDCs? Because the government is required to give subventions to these NDCs. How much is government doing? The NDC, and I don't want to call a name here, the NDC that I belong to, my house is it, they have one little tiny garbage truck, one little measuring about 10 feet in length, 10 or 12 feet in length, small. Sometimes they come on a tractor with a trailer. The men are not properly protected sometimes. And it's kind of like a haphazard kind of thing. You know, sometimes they don't come in a week, 2 weeks, their garbage is there. The drainage is a big issue in these areas. They don't clean the drains. Animals. I'm used to mind cows, so I'm a country boy. But you don't want to see in a residential area the sheep and the goats coming and eating out your plants and defecating on the roads and blocking up the traffic. And so how much is central government empowering the local government? And that is something that needs to be considered. So one, whether or not they should stay out, and two, whether or not they should be giving more to these NDCs to empower them to carry out the functions that these local organs should be carrying out.
All right, James, thank you very much for joining us here at Focus. This has been Focus. It is a production of the Big Smith Newswatch. My name is Leroy Smith, and thank you very much for joining us.